Please welcome from New York City, Alexis Van Hurkman.
So yeah, I'm going to be talking about DaVinci Resolve 10, and first off, I'd like to find out how many of you have seen my SuperMeet presentation. Okay. So you guys may be a wee bit bored, but I am going to be showing a lot of new stuff. There's just a little bit of overlap. I want to know how much overlap I should probably reveal. So the current version of DaVinci Resolve is 9. I'm showing a preview of 10, and I really want to emphasize this is a preview. This isn't even beta software. This is a very, very, very early version of the app, and what I'm going to show you tonight is the tip of the iceberg as far as new features that are coming. A pretty big tip of the iceberg, but there's more yet to come that doesn't exist here just yet. So it's a very exciting release. First off, I'm going to log in, and I'm going to start with the new features right here on the Project Manager page. Those of you who are existing Resolve users, and I wouldn't have mentioned this if I hadn't seen so many hands, it's a small thing but a nice thing. There are now folders available in the Project Manager. Hooray, a folder. So that's super exciting. A lot of, it gets better, really. I just haven't gotten to show this off yet. So I'm going to go into a project that I've set up, and I'm not going to give the full round-trip workflow story because I think most of you have probably already seen that. But for those of you who aren't familiar with Resolve, Resolve is basically a 5-page system. So you've got the media page where you bring in all of the media that you want to work with. In Resolve 10, the media page has kind of gotten a promotion because a lot of the media management that you used to do in what used to be called the conform page, it's now the edit page, has been moved into the media page. So if you're doing a lot of digital dailies work, all of your audio syncing, all of your project, all of your media management is pretty much centralized in this page. So if you're an on-set person, you're probably going to be sitting on this page being very happy you don't have to click back and forth all the time. The other pages are the newly renamed edit page, the color page where you do all of your grading, the gallery where you manage saved grades and stills, and then the deliver page. Each one of these pages is seeing some pretty nice enhancements. I'm going to start with the edit page because this is the big story of this release, online editing tools. And I anticipate you guys are a pretty tough crowd, being LA editors and all. So I wanted to try and spend a little more time talking about some of the online editing features and just giving you some of the thinking that's going into this. First off, I want to emphasize that we have in mind end-to-end workflows. So if I go ahead and take a look at this, the first thing oftentimes you want to do is bring in camera original media, string it out, and do some kind of a one light or maybe even some best light grading if your project has budget. So the first thing that you might want to do is to open up a timeline, and gosh, I am having to squint at this a little bit. Let's say I want to just grab all of that, drop it in, done. So very familiar editing tools used to do things that weren't necessarily that easy in previous versions. Then you can come in here, say we jump up to the track grade, we go ahead and apply a one light grade. Oh, do I not have my mouse button configured as it should be? Oh, that's a new feature that didn't get into this build. Moving on. And there we go. Not necessarily appropriate for this particular setup, but I can apply a grade to an entire timeline all at once, and then go on my way out, you'll notice I've got a new audio track in my delivery page. So I'm really set up to take audio in from edit all the way through delivery and export dailies. So one of the things I'm not going to spend too much time on is you have the ability to apply real-time window burns in Resolve. So what we're looking at here in Final Cut 10 is a series of ProRes proxy clips with window burns. And using this media, the editor's gone ahead and cut together a timeline. And this timeline combines the ProRes proxy media with some effects clips and some audio as well. So all of this has been edited together. And when the project's done, one would hope locked, but not always, and ready to move back to Final Cut, it's an easy thing, or back to Resolve, it's an easy thing to go to File, Export XML. All right, go into the Documents folder, Offline Edit Revised. I'm going to go save that, replace my previous one. Quit. Jump back into my edit page. And now I'm going to import AAF EDL XML. And by the way, this process is the same for AAF files, XMLs, or EDLs. It's basically the same workflow. You're just bringing in different data. Go into my documents. Now that I've got my load XML file dialog, I turn off the automatically import source clips option. Click OK. And now I've got my edited timeline. Now, of course, I'm always hoping that the edit gets locked before they bring it into me. Sadly, that's less and less the case. And that's the main reason why this page has been renamed and more capabilities have been added. So first thing I'm going to do is drop in the audio mix file. This is the first new feature, audio tracks inside of Resolve. Previous versions did not have this, so this is a big deal. A lot of what I'm going to be showing you tonight, these aren't groundbreaking new features to editing, but they're new features to Resolve. So first off, I'm going to go to the middle of this timeline. And let's say in the middle of doing the audio, the director requested some kind of a change, and as I'm playing through, I notice, oh, okay, so someone had the bright idea of bringing the screeching car in a little bit earlier, and now I have to pick up the pieces. So with the regular selection tool selected, one of the things that's been added is the ability to pretty much do roll edits whenever you want. So I'll just grab that, roll it over. I don't have to go into trim mode. This is just a standard feature of the selection tool. Now, of course, I can still resize. I have multiple undos. It's just that since a roll is effectively two resizes happening at the same time, why not have it available all of the time? And that's really indicative of the kind of thinking that we've been putting into these features. This is online editing. You're in a hurry. You don't want to have to do any more clicks or any more keyboard shortcuts than you have to. So how can we make these kinds of cleanup efforts as simple to access as possible? By the way, there are also keyboard shortcuts. So I can go ahead and use my bracket keys, use my U key, trim back and forth. All very new to Resolve users. When the time comes, if you need to do more comprehensive trimming, we do have the integrated trim tool. And again, keeping in mind that you want to work quickly, you're working visually, chances are your hand's going to be on the mouse. It was important to us to have click targets for as many things as possible. So with the integrated trim tool selected, I can grab the top part of the clip to do a slip. I can grab the bottom part of the clip to do a slide. I can grab any part of the clip. I've got a live timeline. It all updates dynamically. Feels really nice. The performance is quite good. And I also have my keyboard shortcuts available for moving back and forth, doing any kind of trimming I need to do. So again, these aren't new features to the world, but they're new features to us, and having worked with cleaning up a lot of timelines for clients, this is really welcome to me to have these kinds of tools just right here on the edit page. So moving on, one question I get asked quite a bit is, well, you know, for online editing, do you really need such a comprehensive editing toolkit? And my response is, when you're prepping a timeline, I mean, frankly, most of us who are colorists have been editors somewhere along the line. And you get used to having all the tools. You get used to having 3-point edits. And so as you're dealing with a situation like this, I've got a hole. That effect clip was not ready to go when they brought it to me, but now I'm told it's available. You don't want to have to learn a different way of getting the shot you want into the timeline. You want to use the tools that are familiar to you, but we can't predict which of the editorial tools out there you'll want to use. So we kind of felt obligated to incorporate as much editing functionality as we could to make your life easier. So I'll hit the X key to go ahead and select that gap. I'm going to jump to the beginning. Line that up, set an endpoint, source destination, drop it in. Now, there's something I want to call your attention to. It's too short. Other editing applications would say, oh, you can't make that edit. You've got a problem. What are you thinking? And of course, my first instinct is, of course I can make that edit. Of course I have enough media, right? How many times do you argue with your NLE? Yes. Only to realize that it's a better mathematician than you are. So, but the philosophy here is, again, you're in a hurry. This is a tool for grown-ups. If you don't have enough media, you know what? Just go ahead and make the edit. You're going to notice there's a gap there, and you're going to deal with it as you need to. And in this case, I notice the gap is there. So I move this over. I do a resize. I move on with my life. And by the way, something else I want to point out, since I've got this incoming portion of the edit selected, let's say I want to do a nudge and overwrite the previous clip. No clip conflict errors. I just do it. Again, don't get in my way. Just let me finish the program so I can get to what I really want to be doing, which is the grading. So moving along, I've got another situation. So the director tells me, you know, this was really a good idea in the edit bay, or it seemed like a good idea, this double take cut, but I was sleeping on it and I really don't like it anymore. And I don't want to have to book more time with the editor. Can you just take care of this for me? In previous versions, I would have really said, no man, you have to give your editor another day's worth of work. But in this version, I can say, all right, fine, I'll take care of it. So lift out that second clip. I'll go ahead and resize that. And to fill that gap, we decide to slow-mo this. This dialogue is going to get better, by the way. So this is in slow motion. The director doesn't like that little bit of weave at the front, so I summon my handy trim tool, and I go ahead and slip that forward to get rid of the weave. I turn off the sound because it's annoying. And checking out that edit, we don't like the sync there, so again, I summon my roll tool. Take care of that. If I want to nudge it around, I can nudge it around. And now I've got the edit that the client wants, but of course I get the question, now it's all stuttery, is there anything you can do about that? Another new feature in Resolve 10 is the ability to open up a field, open up a clip, go into a new inspector that has all the things you would expect in an inspector, and change the retime process to optical flow. I'm going to hit play, real time. So it's really all about solving problems and making you not have to leave Resolve if you don't want to. Now, interoperability is a really big deal for DaVinci. You know, there's a ton of features deliberately incorporated to make it easy for you to move media and projects back and forth. You're going to use the NLE that you want to use. You're going to use the compositing app that you want to use. But if we can save you from having to make that 10th round trip, that's what this release is all about. Moving on, the problem with making clients happy is they want you to make them more happy. So having done all of this, now I get asked, well, you've done all this other stuff. Could you just add a title? I have one title I need put in. Could you do that here? And another new feature is the existence of some basic title generators. So I go, sure. I go ahead and mark that last track and bounce that in. Yes, it's large. We're going to fix that. Yes, they taught me how to write. So I'm just going to shrink that down, drop it down, real time. And I can keep going. You'll notice we've got some color bars here. We didn't have this in previous versions, so if you need to set up some header elements as you're outputting to tape, you just have a lot more things that you can take care of prior to, once again, moving into what we really want to be doing, the color grading. So now that I've got this set up, I'm going to go right back to the front of the timeline. One of the advantages of using Resolve from end to end is you can use Resolve to manage all of your camera original data. You can output dailies in whatever offline format your editor wants to work in. But then on the way back, if you had done any grading, you can benefit from the work you've already done through the process of reconforming the offline clips back to your online media. So here, I've got this grade all ready to go that I created during the dailies process. And so I can use this to start populating my timeline, start pulling this grade together, but I quickly discover, oh, that's not going to work. Now I got to start doing my job. I have to match these shots. So one of the most common operations, for those of you who grade, you know this, is having to make all of the shots look like they match. There's a new tool to make that easier. If I go into split screen and choose selected clips, all I have to do is select multiple clips and I automatically get a side-by-side presentation. This is similar to the playheads interface that you may see in other apps, and this is live, so I can play through and watch the clips in context.
Can you select more than two?
Funny you ask. I can keep going and going and going. And they all play until you reach the end of the clip. So anyway, with all of this set up, I can now move around to select which clip I want to adjust, and I can use my tools I hate trying to do shot matching in front of an audience. I get all self-conscious. But I can make my adjustments, and that's not all. Organizational features were big in this release. So with these clips selected, I have some new timeline filtering options. So for example, I can filter the timeline down to just the selected clips. So if I really want to focus on just this scene, and in particular, I don't want the client looking at the other scenes until we're done with this one, I can go ahead and constrain my timeline this way or a number of other ways. I can identify and isolate all the clips that have noise reduction, all the clips that I happen to have resized. If there's something you're trying to find, these filtering options make it easier for you to narrow down your search without having to use some huge elaborate search interface. And all of this works in conjunction with the Lightroom, which, while not a new feature, has experienced its own advancements. I can now show the color controls from within the lightbox. So if I want to select a clip, make an adjustment, I can just do it right here. And I can output the entire lightbox to my video out using this little control up here. And by the way, I should point out this is also true of those options that are available from the split screen. And I can toggle back and forth. Now here's another fun thing. Let's say I've got this look set and the client wants to see something else. So I'm just going to add a version and do something silly. This isn't for art, but they want it warmed up and more contrast. Maybe I alter the pivot point. And then they want to see something else. So I go ahead and add another version, and maybe this version, they want minimal saturation, and maybe they want to play around with the curves a little bit. So after a while, then the client asks, well, you know, how do I pick? And I go, okay, well, I'll go up to my split screen, and I'll let you see the versions and the original all at once. This goes out to the hero monitor, and we can play through, and you tell me what you like. So, you know, not necessarily the most sexy features in the world, but these are incredibly useful when you're sitting with your client, when you're trying to make up your mind. So I'm going to show all the clips in the timeline, and I'm going to disable the split screen view. And now we're going to take a look at some of the more fun grading features, starting out with the new Windows interface. How many of you use Windows? Okay, so you know in previous versions of Resolve, each node, and for those of you who don't know, each node is an individual collection of color adjustments. Nodes in Resolve are like layers in other applications. Each node previously was limited to 4 of each kind of window that you had available to you. So I'm going to go into my enhanced viewer mode. And I'm going to start with the first new feature, which basically is a more Bezier-oriented method of curve drawing. This has been a big feature request for people wanting to do more precise work. The previous auto-shaping curves were nice and fast, but they didn't give you the kind of precision that you can get with this. And it's a UI that you're all completely familiar with. If you've used any Bezier drawing app, you're going to get this. So I have that set up. Client wants to do something different to the outside there. Having done that, I track it. Track forward, track back. So that's done. But then the next thing I hear is, well, it's a little bit funny that the windows don't match whatever's going to be happening out here. Before, I'm out of curves. I'd have to add another node, use matte blend filter node to combine things together. But now all I have to do is create another curve, keep drawing. I can have as many windows inside of each node as I want. I used to joke that there was a practical limit of 5,000, but people were taking me seriously, so. And the other fun thing is, I can select this curve, I can copy my track data, and I can paste it in. Now it's going to move a little bit because I'm at a different frame, but you can now see with very little muss, very little fuss, I've got these curves moving together, and now I can use that other curve to punch out the window. I can keep going. I can add a circular, resize that to fit the tire, do the same thing, paste the track data, and I'll add another circular. I can do this all day, folks. Bring that down, paste in the track data. And now they're all moving together. I'm done, all inside of one node. And at this point, just to show you how it works, I can go ahead and add an outside node. And in that outside node, I can do the other thing that needed to happen. Maybe we really cool it off outside there, jack up the contrast. All real time. Yes, please. I love the applause. So that's fun. Some more fun stuff. Let's move over to this other clip here. And for this clip, I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to add another node. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click this node, and you can see that there are these color channel options. I can now disable channels for each node so that the adjustments I make within that node only affect one channel. And with that set up, I can even go so far as to change the color space that that node works in. So I can change this to YUV, YCBCR for you more technically minded folks. And with channels 2 and 3 deselected, now I'm just affecting the Y channel, so I can go into my blur palette, and I can blur the color channel or sharpen the color channel without affecting, or I'm sorry, blur or sharpen the luma without affecting the color. So if I want to sharpen that luma channel, I've just set that up. Furthermore, I can go ahead and add a new splitter combiner structure of nodes. This does the same thing, but it externalizes the structure of it, so I can have individual node trees, individual branches affecting each color channel however I want to do. And in conjunction with another new feature, I can go down to the sizing palette. I now have node-based sizing. Before, there were only 2 levels of sizing, the whole project and then clip by clip. Now there's multiple overlapping node-based sizing. And when I use it with this setup, it means I can go ahead and pan and tilt and zoom individual channels. I'm going to zoom that to fit. And now the client may really like that, but doesn't like the edging as a result. This sizing is cumulative, so I can add another node and zoom in to crop out those edges. So again, enabling you to do some very creative things and to work quickly without having to build complicated node structures. You can do some of this in the current version, but it requires you to jump through a few hoops. Now it's just a few mouse clicks, and you're away and running. So this is all well and good, but it gets better. And to make it get better, I'm going to open up another project. And I'm not going to save that. Who needs to save? So now I'm going to show you some stuff that I wasn't able to show you at the SuperMeet. Starting with the new noise reduction feature. Now, optical flow is just one part and I don't care about that error. Optical flow is just one part of a whole family of features in the new version of Resolve. And in particular, if I, pre-alpha software, what are you going to do? I'm going to zoom into this so that hopefully you can see the noise. Funny thing to be showing off. Look at all the noise. But now that you can see the noise, and in particular, I want to show you some noise and detail. There's a new motion effects palette, and this is all optical flow stuff. And by the way, I'll point out to you, everything you've seen so far is going to be in the light version of Resolve, the version that you can download for free, except this. Oh. And you're going to want this. Notice, we've now got spatial noise reduction, which we had previously, but we also now have temporal noise reduction. So I can set up a number of frames to average. I can set up a motion range to average. And now if I alter my threshold, before, after. I don't know how many times I do this in a session. Now, I want to call your attention to the high detail areas. Do you see any softening? Those buildings. Looks pretty good, huh? Now, that's because all this detail isn't being caught by temporal noise reduction, but say the client wants to get rid of some of this colorful noise in here. I now have the ability to separate the luma threshold from the chroma threshold of noise reduction. So I turn off this chain link, I up my chroma threshold to get rid of some of that colorful noise, and then maybe I'll up the luma threshold a little. Ooh, little goes a long way. So now I'm applying both spatial and temporal noise reduction with varying amounts of luma and chroma noise reduction, before, after. And I want to call your attention to the detail in those buildings, because this was a liability of the version of noise reduction in the current version of the software. You always got a little bit of softening. Now, it's really good. And it's not quite real time, but it's a lot better than it's been. Before, after. This is a big deal for me. I do a lot of documentary work, a lot of available light footage, and you're always fighting noise, especially with these highly compressed formats. So this is a feature I'm going to use a lot. Going back, another new feature. I'm going to zoom that to fit. So I've got this shot. She's swishing that wine glass. And we have a new feature where you can add motion blur to a clip. That wasn't there. Simply by raising a slider. So say the client wanted a swishier kind of motion. I can set that up, but now I'm hitting her with that artificial motion blur. By the way, this is also really useful for shots. In fact, I had a project just last week. The client was complaining that the DP kept switching into fast shutter speed with strobing that she really hated. With this feature, I could ameliorate some of that. But all of these new features are limitable. So I can go in here and turn on a window. And now I'm limiting that motion blur just to the inside of that window. So all of these effects work just like everything else in Resolve. I can limit them with keys, I can limit them with windows. It's no big deal. And by the way, while I'm talking about windows, here's a really wide latitude shot. You're all laughing. This is F55. And any of you who've worked with F65 or F55 footage knows the incredible amount of latitude that's available for highlights. So one of the other new features is a new gradient palette. So I'm going to turn that on, and I'm going to use that to save that window. Oh, look, all that information. And the reason I'm not killing the couch is because this gradient window with 2 controls lets me basically cut off a whole portion of the screen, rotate it around, adjust the fall off. So instead of spending 5 mouse clicks resizing a rectangle, I just plop that on and I'm done. So that's one of my favorites. So I saved the best for last. There are plenty more little features, lots of enhancements throughout the app, but one of the biggest pieces of news for me, Open Effects plugins. How many of you use GenArt's Sapphire filters? So Sapphire is a set of, what, 250 plugins that do all kinds of crazy things. And you now have the full power of these Sapphire plugins inside of Resolve. Why is that a big deal? Because as powerful as Resolve is, there are a few things that are kind of hard to do. For example, I've got this clip with a car. The client's going for kind of an early morning look, so maybe I'll blue that up a little bit, jack up the contrast, alter the pivot, get some deeper shadows. That's looking nice. But I want to give it a little something extra. This is a commercial spot, and nothing says commercial spot like a lens flare. Oh yeah. So the way Open Effects works is you create a node, you plop the open effect onto the node, 1 open effect per node, but you can apply as many nodes as you like. So it's very powerful. Now, this is ridiculous. No one would ever want to do that. So I'm going to go and load a new preset. One of the nice things about the Sapphire plugins is a lot of them have libraries of presets that you can access. So let's see if we can find a more attractive lens flare. And by the way, this is the newest version of Sapphire. I believe it's version 7. And I'm told they've rebuilt their elements library with new scans from a wider variety of lenses than in the previous version. So I'm going to use anamorphic 1, because who doesn't like an anamorphic lens flare? Now, I'm sorry, yes. You know, I think he gets a bad rap for that. All right, here's the cool thing, right? Not only do I have this lens flare, and I could keyframe it if I needed to. Remember, effects in Resolve, all these features work just like any other feature. But with this one, all I have to do is adjust the hotspot threshold, and it's going to track itself automatically to the brightest thing in the image. All right, so not only that, I can increase the number of hotspots, right? So now this is looking incredibly ridiculous. But I've got all these parameters, right? I mean, I could spend days on these parameters, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to blur out the flare, make it a little less distinct, and I'm going to dim the brightness just a little bit. I just want a little bit of fog, and now I play through, and that's pretty elegant. You gotta admit, that looks pretty cool. And how much work did I spend on this? Billable hours, people. It's awesome. So other things you can do with Sapphire that are hard to do in Resolve all by itself. Let's say we want to do an old-timey look for this. All right. This is the last thing I'll do. So old-timey look, I'm going to go down to stylize, and I'm looking for film damage. I'm going to reset that node first. So I'm just going to go ahead and drop film damage on. And I've got that set up. I've got all kinds of options for manipulating the saturation. I can go down and have more stains on the image. I can go down and add dust, and I can also add dust on the negative, which is inverted. I can keep going. If I want to be really gross, I can start adding hair. Wow. That's looking terrible. And then, of course, the client does what they always do. Okay, well, I wanted it grungy but pretty. And I go, okay, well, let me go back up to the lighting section, and I know this client loves the glint rainbow. So I've got that set up, and they've gone ahead and implemented all of the on-screen controls. So I can graphically edit this. And oh, by the way, just like everything else, I can use one of my infinite windows to limit this. So I'm going to choose my power window, and now I just want to have this sparkly business over the Eiffel Tower. And if I really want to be cool, I'll track it forward, and that's going to take forever because these are rather processor intensive. So yeah, Open Effects really opens the door to tons and tons of more compositing-oriented effects that you can bring to your grading. And it's a really big deal. So on that note, it's a cool release. It's coming out Q3, whatever that means. So yeah, I think you guys are really going to like it.
Alexis Van Hurkman, everyone.